Hello everyone, welcome back to Gorilla Peace. This is Ashley and that's Fatima. We're back with another episode and today we're going to talk about current situations of gorillas in the world and how they're, how the environment is threatening their existence and yeah, just other things about gorillas in general.
So the current situation for gorillas does not seem to be looking very well. Their populations is in a static decline since the early 2000s. I think that almost 80% of their populations has decreased, but um, their numbers are still rising more compared to other ape species. So that is a good thing that we can take away from this. But it doesn't mean that they're not endangered because the majority of their subspecies are either critically endangered or endangered. So we still need to work a lot on trying to save the species overall.
Yeah, one thing to notice, gorilla is aside from orangutans, I guess, but gorillas notably is the only great ape on the rise, population on the rise in the past, I would say, like decade. Um, but the only thing is that people sometimes overlook and think that since gorilla population is on the rise, that they're not going to be extinct or they're not threatened by current situations anymore. The truth is really we're really limited to Western lowland gorillas specifically that are on the rise. And their populations are mostly being bred in captivity. Gorillas in the wild are still very much losing numbers at the moment, especially mountain gorillas, cross river gorillas. Yeah, because they are very specific to their natural habitat. Um, yeah, so just because gorilla numbers have been on the rise in general as a very large category, it doesn't mean that other subspecies are not in danger.
And their numbers in the wild are right now for the four subspecies. The Western lowland gorilla has the most amount of numbers with 350,000. However, with Eastern lowland gorillas, it's only 6,000. It's even less for mountain gorillas with only 1,000. And then cross river gorillas are believed to only have about 300 individuals left.
Yeah.
And that is difficult to understand because we're trying to raise their populations, but there's only 300 of them, or approximately 300 of them.
Yeah, I will link a link especially for the cross river gorilla because in this website you can also see the numbers of all the different subspecies as well. So it's very helpful to actually visualize how many numbers. I mean, I guess, well, compared to other populations, how much the cross river gorilla is really in danger.
And they live in these small patches of land all across Eastern and Central Africa. And those patches are very divided up and segregated from each other. It doesn't allow a lot of pathways for them to cross either. If you look at like any map, we can maybe link a map here as well. Their populations are basically surrounded by other human populations and many other threats that exist that do not allow them to actually have a lot of living space, which is one of the reasons why their numbers are declining because they're losing so much habitat now that climate change is a big problem. And with more and more companies coming in and logging the forests there, these numbers are just getting more critical, I think.
Yeah, there are several reasons why gorillas are losing their habitat in the wild. One of them is definitely climate change. One of them is logging and other bushmeat trades and stuff. Threats from humans directly. And then another one is actually the constant war war, the constant war situation in Africa, because there has been a lot of like political instability, and that indirectly actually affects gorillas as well. If these areas are not secured, people are more likely to be armed with guns, and also they're more likely to go through the forest for a fight or something, a conflict, which interrupts the gorilla habitats. That's all. Well, all in all, after everything that we talked about today that actually affect gorilla habitats, another problem that is leading to, it's really like the bottleneck and inbreeding for wild gorillas. If you can elaborate more on that, because I think you know more than I do.
Yeah, so a lot of people speculate that with increasing numbers, we are able to save the gorillas as a whole, which is not entirely true because there has been studies done on gorilla genomes where they sequenced 13 gorillas from different populations to probe their genetic diversity. Those genomes show that there's a lot of homozygosity. So what homozygosity means that there's a lot of similarities between them. There's not a lot of variety, which indicates that there has been this type of bottleneck and inbreeding that has been going on. This just means that these gorillas are not well equipped for their environment. So let's say there is a virus or some bacteria or anything like that, a disease starts spreading, these gorillas might not be able to fight it off very well because their immune system is not strong enough, or maybe they cannot handle the climate change situation well. All of these things, they just make the species or the gorilla populations a very weak one. So they're not able to withstand any changes very well, which can lead them to go extinct if something drastic like climate change, for instance, happens, or a human disease gets them.
Yeah, the thing is, the thing with great apes especially is that they're so closely related to humans. They're very likely to actually catch human disease, especially like virus or easily transmittable diseases. But I would say the bottleneck and inbreeding problem is something that I came across during our research that I didn't know that much about before. But if you really think about it, something really obvious, since they're if hypothetically, if their natural habitat is decreasing but their population is increasing, that's a bad thing to do. Like, that's generally a bad thing to do. There will be less space for more gorillas, which is impossible. And I'm guessing if inbreeding is something that's happening more often, similarly to humans, their kids probably have like other defects as well. It's probably more acceptable to, I don't know, genetic mutation.
Yeah.
Probably, right? Yeah. So just
Yeah.
in general, they have like a less healthy population of the
Yeah,
next
inbreeding is
generation.
never a good thing. You find more recessive alleles present in their genome that could carry any defects that would make them not equipped for their environment, and they could just not survive for long enough. They would just die from certain disorders that they develop.
Yeah.
It is a huge problem. So when we see gorilla numbers like increasing, we have to take it with a grain of salt because um, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're raising a healthy population. So we can't just base our whole understanding of their well-being based on numbers that we see.
It's also important to note that a lot of them are born in captivity and born in zoos. And especially, I know most gorillas in zoos are in the US. And they are most of the time raised for, I guess, profit. That doesn't mean that they treat the gorillas badly or anything. Some of them might be, but many of them take good care of the gorillas. But it doesn't mean that gorillas are not like a main attraction for the zoos. Yeah, that's something, another like surprising item that we found during our research, is that how many states in the US actually allow gorillas to be owned legally to this day. And I'm gonna read it out loud, but especially for Kansas, I found it just like, I guess, infuriating that they allow this. So in Kansas, it is legal for anyone to import, possess, buy, and sell any species of ape for any purpose. There are no state permits or registration requirements for gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, or gibbons. However, those species are protected under the Federal Endangered Species Act, and activities involving those animals may require federal permits. So basically what it means is that if you want to buy a gorilla, well, any great ape listed really, you can just buy it from and get it imported from whichever country that you get it from. But I mean, obviously you would acquire from illegal sources because there's no legal trade of all of those listed animals, but they don't require any like registration or permit. The only problem they have is if you actually want to profit off of those animals, then you have to require federal permits. I don't know what other federal permits are there, but the general thing is that if you're in Kansas, you can just buy any great ape and own any great ape as long as no one finds out, or as long as you don't make money off of it, you can just do it. That's still something really surprising to me.
I mean, illegal pet trade for gorillas is pretty insane. I think that we were reading about how a lot of rich people outside of Africa actually own the majority of these gorilla pets. And just in the States, well, I mean, 700 gorillas live in captivity, or it's approximated that they live in captivity, but that number could be much higher. And over half of them live in facilities in the States. So with these statistics, it doesn't actually include the illegal pets that are owned, like let's say in other parts of Asia or the Middle East or Europe. So that number is definitely higher. These gorillas are usually not registered. So that's a big problem because gorillas are emotionally very attached to their family groups as well. And when poachers kill off their mothers and capture the babies, those babies are not equipped to live as a pet. And many
Yeah.
of them mourn the deaths of their family members to the extent that they actually die.
Yeah. And another thing that I found fascinating, and we found out about this in class because someone asked the question, is someone asked, what are some of the gorilla sanctuaries that we found during our research? And then I realized we didn't find out about any gorilla sanctuaries. And then we kind of went into like more about this problem. And then from what I looked up, most gorillas exist in the US. They either exist as personal possession or they exist in zoos. I'm sure there are other ones that no one knows about, as you said before. uh, people keep it a secret, and then maybe I think there are a few wildlife centers that became sanctuaries for gorillas to stay, but not specifically any built gorilla sanctuaries to my knowledge. That one of the reason is that we can put the website here as well, the one I just mentioned, where you can check for your state, great apes or only a gorilla is legal. One of the problem is that it is still legal for a lot of states to actually own or private possess gorillas. So to this day, they're still being traded as pets, which I don't understand. Why can't you have a cat? Like gorillas, they, let's just be honest, they're not even easy to take care of. They eat like so much food every day.
Stronger than humans too, so.
Yeah, they're stronger than humans, and I'm pretty sure they're pretty, I don't know, are noisier than a cat. Um, yeah, and they require a large living space and proper diet if you actually want to take care of them like healthy. Um, yeah, but one of the really, really big problem is that personal possession and legal possession just in general is still very prevalent to the United States to this day. Yeah.
I also discovered that despite the fact, so in the States, many states ban the possession of apes. However, sometimes it is mentioned that you need a permit. I found it pretty surprising that they considered gorillas to be deleterious exotic animals, which would be dangerous for livestock and other animals in agriculture, rather than for the fact that like they were banned because they were considered deleterious exotic animals.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's not about the fact that they were endangered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's pretty surprising to me. So in all of these things that I was reading about, they classify them as dangerous wild animals, which, yeah, it is true. They're wild animals and they can be dangerous. But I find it surprising that the ban is based on that rather than on the fact that these are endangered species.
I think that goes back to, I think somewhat goes back to the public image of gorillas because they're so well represented in the media. Many people don't think that they're drastically losing population.
Yeah.
Many people don't think gorillas are something that we might lose in our lifetime, to be honest. um,
Yeah.
yeah, because they're so well represented in the media, you see it everywhere. Many people use it as logos and stuff. So yeah, and I didn't know that.
Yeah,
What
I
would
was
you
just
do to endanger the livestock, the local livestock, like release a gorilla back in the wild in your local?
I, it's surprising to me. I mean, I did see with some of the states that they might have mentioned that they are exotic and endangered, but the majority of
Yeah.
them consider them to be banned because they're dangerous. And I'm not sure if they're trying to scare people with that statement, but
Maybe.
I think it's the best. It's not the best statement, you know. I would rather put down these are critically endangered exotic animals and they're not for made for being pets.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of, I mean, what would they do if it was like a chinchilla? The chinchillas are not necessarily dangerous. Would they consider that to be um,
Invasive
endangered?
species.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Would they?
Chinchilla.
No, I mean, like, I was wondering because the way that they phrase it in the law is not necessarily like these are endangered. They kind of base it on these are dangerous. So it's kind of strange for me to see that.
Oh, I see it. So especially, for example, for Mississippi, so it says the important possession of certain wild animals deemed inherently dangerous. In addition, the state also addressed the cruelty laws as well as its endangered species provisions.
Yeah. So it's strange, like if we're paying attention to the law, and we should also look up why they were banned to begin with. And it's funny because it seems that they're banned because of selfish reasons rather than for the gorilla population. I always thought that when they ban these things, they think about that particular population that's in such a drastic decline and they talk about conservation, which they really don't. They actually focus more on the fact that it's bad for us, not really bad for them.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just checking out Missouri as well. So that one, this is the funniest one I've seen. I think this is the one probably you're talking about, as well as I think Nevada.
Yeah.
Um, so this one literally just says all gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, bonobos, and gibbons are classified as dangerous wild animals. And because of their status as dangerous wild animals, the possession of these species of apes is regulated throughout the state, and any person possessing an ape must register the animal with local law enforcement agency. Although the dangerous wild animal laws do not restrict the import, possession, and use of apes in Missouri. So they're trying to, basically what they're saying, they're trying to protect the humans. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
They're like, we don't give and we don't give anything about the animals. Like, we just want to make sure that these dangerous wild animals are not hurting you.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's the other way around, but okay.
Yeah. Even when it comes to transmission of diseases, which we could see as something that might be dangerous because they can always transfer diseases back and forth, right? But I feel that
But that's just like any human, isn't
yeah,
it?
I feel like with our population, we have the power to actually annihilate them faster than they could do anything to us. So,
Yeah.
like, that particular gorilla would be surrounded by many more humans that could give them a cold and they could just die off, which I think a lot of was that the orangutan group that was talking about this, but a general cold could kill
It's
certain
the chimpanzees, I believe.
okay,
Yeah.
that can happen to gorillas too. I'm pretty sure we're 98% the same.
Yeah. Very
So
much so. That's so weird because they're basically human, and you're saying like the dangerous part is that they're human. Anyways,
yeah.
we can move on to talk about. So we have a few resources on looking at the, I guess, gorilla rehabilitation as well as gorilla release programs. And surprisingly, these ones were not really prominent during our research. I guess because it's something not most gorillas have participated in when they're captured. Most gorillas in captivity, as we said before, they either end up being personal possessions or in zoos or just in research centers. Um, those that can be rehabilitated and re-released in the wild, it's only a very small percentage of gorillas that are able to do that. However, we do have these two foundations that you can look and donate to if you do want to support these initiatives. So we have the gracegorillas.org, and this foundation is initiated by the Dayan Foundation. And their main purpose is for the rehabilitation of gorillas in Africa, wild populations in Africa. I believe you can talk about more the Anne Fossey Foundation than I do.
Yeah, so the Diane Fossey Foundation, they have this mission of working on four different things. So they work on daily protection. So there's groups of trackers that and anti-poacher teams that will go through the forest and make a mark of the gorilla populations that they encounter, and they write down all the names of the individuals, and they check how they're doing, those individuals, if any of the individuals died or if any of them are sick, or just generally logging to see, recording how the population is doing. And then there's also anti-poacher teams, which go through the forest trying to protect the populations from poachers and hunters, by basically facing the poachers themselves. And the second part of the Karasoke Center, the Karasoke Research Center, or the Dayan Foundation, is that they work on research. So they study these gorilla populations for trends, for behavioral patterns, and other things. And at the same time, they work on educating future conservationists from Africa. So they train aspiring scientists and students, and that's one of the key goals of the programs in Africa, to educate local populations on the well-being of gorillas, because you can't expect gorilla populations to become healthier and bigger without involving the local populations that have lived alongside gorillas for such a long time. So they help communities by building these programs aimed at increasing, for instance, alternative foods, and provide educational programs. So they educate teachers on conservation, and they also teach people other ways of farming, for instance, and other ways of growing food on the land in order to not impact the wildlife species that are there.
Yeah,
So it's
and yeah, and specifically for the Grace initiative, I guess, um, about rehabilitating gorillas. Most of them are, I think it's called Gaur gorillas. Gaur's gorillas in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Um, yeah, and they're trying to use the rehabilitation program to build a healthy and stable population of wild Gaur gorillas in the forest. And I can leave a map of their program. And yeah, the other one that we found out about is Damien Espinal's release. I think it's called release program. It's not necessarily, he doesn't call it a rehabilitation program. I'm not sure why, but it's more like a release program. So they do get orphan or gorillas. Many times gorillas are abandoned as well, not by the gorilla parents, but if poachers or hunters, they're trying to possess the gorillas, and then they get found out by people, or they can't carry the gorillas. I don't know, just for some reason they decide to abandon the gorillas. The baby is just there helpless. And then whoever end up finding it are likely to notify authorities, and then those gorillas are considered as orphans or abandoned gorillas that are possible for release or rehabilitation programs. And for Damien Espinal's release program, he does it mostly in the, I believe it is Gabon. Is it Gabon or Gabon?
Gabon, yeah.
Gabon, yeah. Yeah, so I can also leave his website in the video and also in the description. He's been very popular on YouTube, and recently it's it's being recommended to everyone, that the video about the gorilla he met, I guess raised or met a long time ago, that he went back to in the forest to visit, that also was flirting with his wife, I believe.
Yeah.
That was the narrative. Yeah, but you probably, if you search on this topic, you probably have seen this video, but we'll also leave it here and you can go watch it. It's very fun. The gorillas are really smart, so
They're very cute too.
yeah.
Wanted to add to the Grace Foundation that nearly all of the orphans that are taken in are under the age of 3, where for gorilla standards, at the age of 3 and 4, they're basically inseparable from their mothers. So what the Grace Foundation does is that they pair each gorilla with a surrogate mother. So the surrogate mother is a human, obviously, but that person spends 24 hours with their gorilla. They feed them and groom them. They even sleep with them, like a mother would with their infant, in order to, they can't replace the mother, obviously, but they try to make it as comfortable as possible for the infant. And they take
Right.
them to the forest every single day so that the infant can explore and discover things in the forest and grow a little bit. But after some time, they are taken to a group of gorillas that were all abandoned, some of them being older females as well. And surprisingly, the females, um, in a sense, adopt these infants as their own, and they take care of them and protect them and raise them as well. So that's a surprising thing that came across.
Yeah, so I'm guessing it's less likely for females to adopt them in the wild because mostly that's like kind of like the silverback, the dominant one's job to accept or does not accept and a small animal, well, it's not a small animal, a baby into their group. But yeah, I guess in captivity, they definitely have a different kind of social structure at that point. Another thing to mention is that when adult gorillas are captured and treated and have lived with humans for a while, it's very hard for them to be released back in the wild and also um, just be detached to human relationships in general because as we learned from Coco and other examples before, they are very smart, intelligent animals and they have very strong social connections to humans as well. So what happens to these gorillas is that you can say that being human, it's a culture, and when they're used to and have learned this culture of interacting with certain people and certain things and certain ways of living, it's kind of hard for them to go completely back into the wild and live what is considered like a normal wildlife anymore, because for them interacting with humans is already part of their world. It's something that they've learned and they've learned to use it as well. um, yeah, I've seen um, a few videos where they tried releasing back releasing an adult gorilla into the wild, um, but it didn't work because they would keep coming back. They would keep coming back to the suddenly cannot remember what it's called, not the station, but like
Rehabilitation center, or
yeah, I think conservation like area just in
yeah.
general, and there are these people that would usually like feed them or something, interact with them on a daily basis, and they will always try to go back and find them because they have attachment to those people. So it's one of the reasons why it's hard for gorillas to um, rehabilitate back
Yeah.
into the wild. Yeah.
Another fun fact about the Dayan Foundation, I guess, is that maybe some of you have heard about it, but recently there has been this um, Reddit group called Wall Street Bets that donated um, quite a huge amount of money to the Dayan Fossey Fund. It was approximately 350,000 US dollars. And the reason being that, well, they came up with this quote that said apes together are stronger, or they were aping together or something like that. And it was in a sense that this Wall Street Bets group decided collectively to donate to buy stocks from GME, which is a GameStop company, and they brought that company out of bankruptcy, almost bankruptcy, and they made a huge amount of money by doing that, and many of them decided to donate a lot of that money to the Dayan Fund, which is awesome because in that particular week when this was happening, about maybe over 1,000 gorillas were adopted, versus that would not usually happen.
Yeah, I believe the joke was that like they were primitive or less than human. That's like the thing. But they were saying with more power we can, basically they're trying to go against capitalism. Yeah. Yeah, that's why they called themselves apes, because they were like, well, even though we don't have like much, we're less than those millionaires, but we can do something together as a big group.
So it started out as a joke and a prank, but it had its good sides to it. I mean, donating and being able to sponsor about 1,000 gorillas is a lot. $350,000 is not easy to come up by. So
it's very surprising ending, but also a good ending.
yeah, it's a good thing they donated to the Dayan Fund.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it's quite a rare donation that they would receive that large amount of money.
Yeah.
At once, yeah. Anyways, that's about it for us today. Today we talked about the current situation of gorillas and rehabilitation as well. For the next episode, we're actually going to talk about what you can do to help grade 8 populations and what you can help gorillas in general, and our project for this initiative as well. So keep watching. Bye.